Hi, you're watching Reddit Confessions. Today's story? It starts with a suitcase, a silence, and a man who finally said the right thing. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, a duffel bag already half-zipped by her feet. "Clyde," she said without blinking. "I'm leaving you. You never helped me." I was holding a bowl of cereal. No dramatic music. No thunderclap outside the window. Just Raisin Bran going soggy in my hands while my wife of 8 years decided that Tuesday morning was the best time to blow up my entire existence. I stared at her like she was a puzzle with missing pieces. Not angry, not even confused, just blank. Like my brain hadn't loaded the update for this moment yet. She raised an eyebrow, waiting for me to fall apart, argue, cry, something. Instead, I said, "Do you want help packing?" And the way she looked at me, like I'd finally proven her point. She didn't answer. She just turned around and walked toward the bedroom, expecting me to follow. And I did. Like an idiot. I don't know why I said it. Maybe because my whole marriage had become a routine of doing things she didn't notice. Maybe because deep down, I thought if I helped her leave, it wouldn't hurt as much when she actually did. I helped fold her clothes. She gave directions like I was a hotel bellhop. "Not that one. That one goes in the carry-on. Be careful with the heels." Heels. She hadn't worn heels around me in months. She took a call while I was stuffing her hairdryer into the side pouch. She walked into the bathroom, but I heard it. Every word. "Yeah," I told him. "No, it went better than I thought. He's helping." I didn't ask who it was. I already knew. His name was Blake, and I'll tell you about him later. But just know this. He was the kind of guy who wore sunglasses indoors and said things like, "We're just vibing," and "Energy is everything, man." I once asked her what she saw in him. She said, "He listens." I wanted to scream. I've been listening for years, but I didn't. I nodded, like a fool. She left 3 hours later. I carried her suitcase down the steps, placed it gently into the trunk of her car like it was full of glass, and stood there while she adjusted the mirror and didn't look back once. The funny part? The dishwasher still had clean plates. The laundry basket was empty, and the trash had already been taken out. But apparently, I never helped her. I stood in the living room for a long time after she drove off. Not because I was frozen with emotion, but because I was staring at the envelope she'd left on the coffee table. One word written on it: open. I did. Inside was a receipt, a motel booking, dated 3 weeks ago, 2 guests, 3 nights, her name, and his, and that was the moment it clicked. She didn't leave because I never helped her. She left because she'd already found someone who did, even if he was just good at pretending. The motel receipt was wrinkled, like it had been folded and refolded before she decided to leave it for me. I stared at it longer than I should have. 3 nights, 2 guests, and 1 room with a king-size bed. It was dated 3 weeks ago, which meant the lie had already taken root while I was still packing her lunch for work like a fool. I remember that week too well. She came home one night with a sunburn on her chest. Said it was from driving around showing properties all day. I believed her. I even bought her aloe vera. That's the part that breaks me the most. Not just the betrayal, but how I bent over backward to soothe the consequences of it. That night after she left, I sat on the floor with a bottle of warm beer and her voicemail password playing on repeat in my head. I hadn't used it in years, but I remembered it. Her childhood dog's name, spelled backward. Because I'm that guy, the one who remembers the little things that clearly never mattered. 3 voicemails were saved. The first one was from her mom. Typical stuff. "Call me when you can. Love you. Hope Clyde isn't working too much again." I almost laughed at the irony. The second one stopped me cold. "Hey babe, I got us the cabin for this weekend just like we said. No neighbors. No signals. Just us. Pack light. Bring that blue thing you wore last time." His voice. Blake. He sounded like the kind of guy who flexes in the mirror after brushing his teeth. You could practically hear the smirk. It made my stomach churn. The third message was quiet at first. Just static. Then her voice. "You don't need to respond. I know what I'm doing is cruel, but I can't live like this anymore. He's not a bad man, Blake. He's just a shadow. He exists, but he doesn't live. You make me feel alive. A shadow. That's what I'd become to her. Something that just existed around the edges. Background noise. Reliable. Predictable. Boring. I guess helping someone with taxes and building shelves doesn't compete with midnight motel getaways and energy matching. But here's the twist I didn't see coming. The reason she left that receipt? It wasn't guilt. It wasn't some last-minute honesty. It was insurance. The next morning, my supervisor at the warehouse called me in early. Said there'd been a complaint about me. Formal one. Accusations of emotional volatility and aggressive behavior at home. I was stunned. Then I saw the HR file. Her name was listed at the bottom of the complaint. She said she feared for her safety. That's when I realized the suitcase wasn't the end. It was the start of a demolition job. One she'd planned carefully, brick by brick, to make sure I couldn't stand when the dust cleared. She wasn't just leaving. She was erasing me. I didn't sleep after that HR meeting. Couldn't. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel all the way home. I kept replaying her voice in my head. How calm she sounded in that voicemail. How matter-of-fact she was in the complaint she filed against me. There weren't even specifics. Just vague, poisonous language. Aggressive tendencies. Passive threats. Mood swings. That was enough. Enough to get a warning from work. Enough to put me under a microscope. Enough to make people start whispering. And the worst part? It worked. She weaponized ambiguity. There was no evidence, but no one needed it. Just a scared-looking woman with a composed voice and a few buzzwords. And me? I'm the guy who once cried at an insurance commercial. But now I was suddenly someone to keep an eye on. Possible danger. A walking liability. I called her that evening. Not to yell, not to argue, but to ask why. Why did she have to go that far? Why turn leaving into character assassination? She didn't answer, of course. But her lawyer did. Yes, her lawyer. The guy sounded like he'd been waiting for my call. Calm, firm, rehearsed. Said Melanie had no intention of speaking to me directly and that any future communication would go through him. He added that she'd already filed for a protection order preemptively. I didn't even know that was possible when there hadn't been an incident. But apparently, emotional intimidation and patterns of control now count. I was stunned, completely gutted. Everything was moving like a slow-motion landslide, and I was standing at the bottom with my arms up, begging the rocks not to hit me. She wasn't just leaving me. She was ensuring that my name came with a warning label. And the worst part? No one was asking for my side. Later that week, I got a call from an unknown number. At first, I thought it was another HR update or her lawyer again. But the voice on the other end was quiet, nervous, familiar. Clyde, it's Mira, she whispered. I shouldn't be calling you. Mira was Melanie's coworker. I'd met her maybe twice at holiday parties. Shy, soft-spoken, the kind of person who always kept her head down. She said she couldn't talk long, but she needed to tell me something. She's not who you think she is, Mira said. She's been planning this since last summer. The complaint, the affair, all of it. It's not just Blake either. I felt like the room tilted. What do you mean not just Blake? There was a pause. Static. Then, she told people you hit her, Clyde. She showed bruises. But they weren't real. I saw the makeup in her drawer. Couldn't breathe. Mira said she was calling because she couldn't live with the guilt anymore. That everyone in the office just went along with it because Melanie's charm and confidence had a gravity to it. People followed her. They feared her disapproval. And when she started spinning the narrative, no one wanted to be the one who questioned her. She told Blake you cheated first. That you used to scream at her in your sleep. She's got people wrapped around her finger. I think she wants to ruin you so no one asks what she did. I thanked Mira. I asked if she'd go on record. She said no. She was scared. She had to think about her job, her apartment. I understood. But it didn't stop the bitterness from swelling in my chest. Melanie was playing chess while I was still trying to understand the rules. I sat in the dark for hours that night. No TV. No lights. Just me and the creeping realization that I was no longer just a husband who got left. I was a narrative. A villain in a story someone else wrote about me. And unless I did something soon, that story was going to become my reality. That's when I decided I needed to find out who else was involved, and just how deep this game went. I woke up the next morning with my mouth dry, and the sound of Myra's voice still echoing in my head. She's not who you think she is. The air in the house felt heavier. I hadn't turned the thermostat up. Maybe I was just suffocating under the weight of everything I now knew. Melanie didn't just cheat. She didn't just lie. She fabricated a version of me that had nothing to do with who I really was, and she was handing it out like a press kit. And the world, it was eating it up. I spent the day digging through every drawer, envelope, and folder in the house, trying to piece together the trail she left behind. Not because I thought I could fix anything, but because I needed to understand how long I'd been asleep while she was planning my public execution. I found the first thread in our shared storage bin, the plastic one in the hallway closet labeled taxes and old crap. Buried under W-2s and faded receipts, I found a contract. A signed retainer agreement from 4 months ago. Her lawyer wasn't just some random guy she called last week. She'd been working with him long before she ever said a word to me about leaving. His name? Raymond Sloan. I didn't recognize it at first. But when I Googled him, my jaw nearly hit the floor. He wasn't just a divorce attorney. He was also listed as legal counsel for a boutique real estate agency, Landmark and Laurel. The same agency Melanie worked at. So this wasn't just a breakup. This was business. I dug deeper, looked up public records. It didn't take long to find that Raymond's firm had handled multiple quiet separations for other employees at the company, always female employees, and always with eerily similar claims of emotional abuse and silent suffering. In each case, the man walked away with nothing. No property, no reputation, and often no job. Was this a system? My hands trembled as I flipped through her old work folders. Buried in the middle was an unsigned NDA, non-disclosure agreement, listing shared internal materials, personal relationship details, and digital communications, the kind of document you prepare when you know things might get legally messy. It was never signed by me. She must have printed it and decided she didn't need it. She had enough already. I felt the panic start to rise in my throat. Everything was connected. The lawyer, her company, the whispers, the perfect, polished narrative. And I had no idea who was still on my side, if anyone. That's when I made the mistake of reaching out to Greg. Greg was supposed to be my friend. We'd known each other since college. He was there when I met Melanie. He toasted our engagement, danced at our wedding, and helped me build the bookshelf in our den. So I figured if anyone could tell me the truth, it would be him. I texted, "You've heard the rumors. I need to talk. Please. I'm not okay." He didn't answer for 2 hours. When he finally responded, the message was cold. "I think it's best we don't talk, man. I'm staying out of this." That's when I knew. He wasn't just avoiding me. He knew something. Or worse, he was part of it. I scrolled through our old texts and found the last photo he sent me. From a birthday party 3 months ago. A group selfie. I zoomed in on the reflection in the background, barely visible in the sliding glass door behind them. It was Melanie, standing closer to Greg than she should have been, whispering something into his ear while he smiled. I stared at the photo for a long time. I always assumed Blake was the first betrayal. But now, the whole picture was falling apart, and I didn't even know where the cracks began. If Greg was involved, what else had I missed? How deep did this web go? I wasn't just betrayed. I was surrounded. After the thing with Greg, I couldn't sit still anymore. It felt like the walls in my house were whispering things I didn't want to hear. Every creak in the floorboards sounded like judgment. I kept pacing back and forth, talking to myself out loud like a lunatic, asking invisible people why this was happening, how I let it get this far, and what I ever did to deserve watching my own life unravel from the outside in. I didn't sleep that night. My body laid down, but my brain stayed standing. Around 4 a.m., I started pulling things from the attic. Boxes we hadn't touched in years. Old laptop chargers, junk mail from our first apartment, photo albums filled with fake smiles. Somewhere in the middle of all that, I found the gray plastic shoebox where we used to store random flash drives. Melanie used to hoard them, promotional ones from open houses, old backups of digital files, even one shaped like a house key. I sat on the floor, plugged in the first one, and scrolled through its contents. Nothing much. Pictures of houses. Some PowerPoint slides from real estate seminars. Boring stuff. The second one was empty. The third one changed everything. It was labeled client_review_backup. But the files inside weren't reviews. They were recordings. Dozens of audio files with strange names. Tuesday _, lunch _, post _, I opened one and heard her voice. Melanie. Laughing. Talking like she was on speakerphone. He has no clue. It's honestly sad. He folded my laundry yesterday and looked proud of himself. Another voice replied, Blake, you're doing him a favor. He gets to be a martyr. They love that. Then when you're gone, he can cry into his diary about how he was the good guy. I felt my skin crawl. I opened another file. Greg this time. He sounded tipsy. You sure he's not catching on? Like, you've been kinda sloppy with the excuses. She responded, calm as ever. He's not the type. Clyde thinks guilt is love. He thinks if he just keeps apologizing, I'll come back. They laughed, and laughed, and laughed. I clenched the flash drive so tight my knuckles turned white. I wanted to crush it, but I didn't. Not this time. I labeled it, locked it away, and made 3 backups. If they were building a case against me, I now had something stronger than emotion. I had their own voices. But here's where it got worse. One of the final files was newer, dated just 2 days before she left. She wasn't talking to Blake or Greg. She was talking to someone named Morgan. And this voice, it was a woman. I'm not even sure I want to be with any of them, Melanie said. Morgan laughed. Then what's the plan, babe? I'm burning the bridge. All of them. Clyde, Blake, Greg. I'm starting fresh. Once the money clears from the condo sale, I'm disappearing. No more crumbs. Just clean air. Clean air. That phrase stuck with me. She wasn't running to someone. She was running away from everyone. That's when I realized something terrifying. I might not be the only one she was manipulating. She was playing all of them, using Blake for the drama, Greg for the cover, me for the alibi. And she was about to cash out and vanish. I had 7 days until the sale of our condo went through. 7 days before she walked away with hundreds of thousands of dollars. Legally signed over while I sat stunned on the sidelines. I needed to move. Now, so I called Mira again. This time she picked up right away. Please, I said. I don't want to hurt anyone, but I need to stop her. There was a long pause. Then she said, I think I know someone who can help, but you're not going to like it. And just like that, I knew the next part of the story wouldn't be about heartbreak. It would be about survival. The name Mira gave me was Nolan Parrish. I'd never heard of him before, but she spoke like he was some kind of whispered solution people only mentioned when they were desperate enough to cross lines they couldn't uncross. He's not a private investigator, she said. He doesn't have a badge and he doesn't wear a suit. But if there's something to find, he'll find it. And he won't ask why. I was already in too deep to hesitate. That same evening, I drove across town to a laundromat off Locust Avenue. That's where Nolan wanted to meet. Table in the corner, right beneath the flickering fluorescent light, between 2 humming dryers. He looked nothing like I expected. Mid-40s maybe, clean-shaven, wearing jeans and a weathered gray hoodie, sipping orange soda from a fast food cup. He didn't smile when I introduced myself, didn't ask for my story, just tapped the table twice with his fingers and said, Tell me what you want to know. So I told him everything. About Melanie, Blake, Greg, the voice recordings, the false complaint, the real estate company, the lawyer, the sale of the condo. I dumped everything out like a man on fire trying to explain where the smoke started. And Nolan? He just sat there and absorbed it all like it was data on a screen. He didn't flinch, didn't sigh or blink or shake his head, just nodded occasionally and asked very specific questions, always with surgical calm. How long have you shared the condo title? Does she log into your cloud backup? Any bank logins ever shared over email? By the end of the conversation, I felt like I'd just gone through a financial and emotional autopsy. But Nolan finally looked up, tapped his knuckles against the table again, and said, "All right, I'll be in touch within 48 hours. Keep your phone close. Don't confront anyone. Not yet." I left feeling like something had shifted. Not hope, not quite, but momentum. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't just reacting. I was preparing. 2 days later, Nolan texted, "We need to talk. It's worse than you thought." We met at a coffee shop this time. Nolan slid a folder across the table, and when I opened it, I felt my throat tighten. Inside were screenshots, dozens of them, messages between Melanie and multiple people, names I recognized, names I didn't. One stood out immediately: Ethan Calder, my coworker, a guy I had lunch with almost every Thursday. Apparently, Melanie had been feeding him stories for months, lies about me, about how I monitored her messages and isolated her emotionally. Ethan had forwarded those claims to HR anonymously. He was the concerned friend. Another file showed a money transfer, not huge, just under $2,000, from Greg's account to Melanie's, disguised as event expenses. Nolan traced it back to a shared Venmo history, matching the date she bought herself that Freedom Weekend at the Mountain Motel. Then came the bombshell. "She forged your digital signature," Nolan said quietly, pointing to the bottom of a scanned document. "On the condo transfer paperwork, she authorized sole ownership." I stared at it. My name written in smooth, practice cursive, but I never signed it. I never even saw the form. "She filed it last Friday," he added. "It's scheduled to finalize in 3 days." My ears rang. My fingers went numb. She was stealing the condo. Completely. Legally. And no one had questioned it because she made it all look tidy. Smooth. Civil. Like we'd agreed to part ways and she'd simply taken her half. And then some. I felt sick. And angrier than I'd ever been in my life. Not just at her. At myself. For letting it happen. For trusting too much. For not seeing that she'd replaced love with calculation and I'd mistaken her silence for peace. "What do I do now?" I asked. Nolan folded his hands. "You have evidence. Leverage. But if you want to stop her, you'll need to move before the paperwork finalizes. We have a window, but it's narrow." I nodded slowly, gripping the edge of the folder like it was a lifeline. "I'll do whatever it takes." Because this wasn't just about getting even anymore. It wasn't about Blake or Greg or the lies she told her lawyer. It was about proving that I existed. That I wasn't some forgettable afterthought in her story. That I was real. And I wasn't going down without a voice. I don't remember driving home after that meeting with Nolan. I was there, sure. My hands on the wheel, headlights carving through dusk, but my brain was elsewhere. Numb. My whole body felt like it had slipped underwater, floating somewhere between disbelief and fury. Melanie had forged my name. She'd fed lies to people I trusted. And within 3 days, she would legally own the condo we both paid for, the home we built together out of years of compromise and broken dreams. And I'd be the footnote, the guy who didn't help. But Nolan had given me something more than information. He gave me leverage and time. Not much, but enough if I moved precisely. So I did. I made appointments with a lawyer that same night. I sent notarized statements and submitted a challenge to the property transfer using the digital evidence Nolan provided. We couldn't stop it entirely yet, but we could stall it. That was the key. Every hour bought me ground to stand on. What I didn't expect was who reached out next. The following morning, as I was leaving the courthouse, I got a call from a blocked number. I hesitated, then picked up. The voice on the other end was shaky but unmistakable. It was Blake. "Clyde," he said. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I just found out something, and I think you deserve to know." I almost hung up. I had no room left for his nonsense. But then he said something that made me freeze in place. "She lied to me too, man. It wasn't just you." I said nothing, just waited. Let him dig. She told me you two had separated a long time ago, that she was just waiting on the paperwork. She said you knew about us, that you were okay with it. Said she was protecting me from your temper. He sounded bitter now, panicked almost. But I found her texts to Greg, and some to a guy named Morgan, and others. Christ, man, I think she's been running the same story on all of us. There was a pause, and I could hear the reality crashing into him. She took $5,000 from me, said it was for legal fees, said she'd pay it back after she sold the place. But now she won't answer. She ghosted me. I went to her office and they said she quit 2 days ago. My heart started racing. Quit? Where is she now? I asked, voice low. I don't know, Blake said. But I think she's leaving town. Disappearing. That changed everything. I hung up and drove straight to Mira. She met me outside her apartment, already looking anxious. When I told her about the call, she nodded slowly. She's been pulling cash from the business account all month, she said. Little by little. But yesterday, she closed it completely. That was it. Melanie wasn't just trying to win. She was erasing the entire game board and vanishing. The forged signature was part of a final sweep. One last extraction before she disappeared with the money, the condo, and her new clean air life. Nolan called again that afternoon with an update of his own. She booked a flight, he said. Tomorrow morning. Private terminal. Paid in full. Under a shell name she used once before on a rental car in 2019. Where's she going? I asked. Costa Rica. I stood in the middle of my kitchen, surrounded by unopened mail and silence, gripping my phone like it was the only thing keeping me anchored to the floor. I had one night, one shot to stop everything before she crossed that invisible line that would make her untouchable. But more than that, I needed something I hadn't had since this all started. I needed the truth on paper, on tape, in undeniable clarity. Something no one could argue with. And I knew exactly where to get it. So I drove. Not to Blake. Not to Greg. Not to the lawyer's office. I drove to Melanie's mother. Margaret Atwell never liked me. She once told me during Thanksgiving that I was pleasant enough but far too soft. The kind of man, she said, who lets life happen to him. I hadn't spoken to her since Melanie left. But she answered the door wearing a confused look and a loose cardigan. She didn't slam the door in my face. That was a start. What do you want? She asked. I swallowed hard. Answers. And a chance to fix what she broke before it gets worse. She stared at me for a long time, then stepped aside. Come in, she said. I figured this day would come. What she told me next unraveled every assumption I had about my marriage. Margaret Atwell didn't sugarcoat anything. She never had. As we sat in her living room surrounded by old doilies and the faint smell of lavender, she poured tea like we were about to discuss the weather. But what she revealed cut deeper than any storm I'd weathered in this mess. She's been broken for a long time, Clyde, she said without blinking. I tried to help her. We went to counseling after her father left. But Melanie, she learned early how to rewrite reality to survive it. Lying didn't feel like lying to her. Felt like power. She told me things I never knew. That Melanie had conned old landlords, manipulated old boyfriends into signing leases she'd walk away from, and faked medical bills once to get out of a job. Margaret said she never fully understood the extent until Melanie started applying those same tricks to our marriage. She didn't leave you because you were weak, Margaret said. She left you because you didn't let her control you. You gave and she couldn't feed on that. She needed chaos, manipulation, and you offered her calm. By the end of the conversation, I understood something I hadn't grasped in months of pain. Her betrayal wasn't about me. It never was. I was just the next stage in a cycle she'd been repeating for years. I just happened to last longer than the rest. I left Margaret's house with a strange peace in my chest. Not joy, not victory, just peace. Like the final puzzle piece had finally snapped into place and I could finally step back and see the picture for what it really was. That night, I worked with Nolan and my lawyer to file an emergency injunction. With the audio evidence, the forged documents, and the bank records Mira helped compile, We had just enough to freeze the sale, flag her bank accounts, and launch a formal investigation. Melanie never got on that plane. She was intercepted by airport security after trying to pass through with falsified ID, linked to an account under her alternate name. I wasn't there to see it. I didn't need to be. Some endings don't need witnesses. She ended up settling. Quietly, the condo stayed in my name. She forfeited her share of the joint account, and her lawyer stopped returning her calls after the forgery became public. Blake disappeared. Greg changed jobs. Mira, she got a promotion well earned. As for me, I still walk by the place where we kept her suitcase. I don't avoid it anymore. I don't replay the moment over and over. I don't ask why I helped her pack. Because the truth is, that was never the mistake. Helping her leave was the beginning of me finally showing up for myself. I've since started therapy. Real therapy. And yeah, I still flinch at the idea of letting someone new in. But I don't feel broken anymore. Just bruised. And bruises heal. Slowly. Quietly. Honestly. So to those watching this, thank you for sticking through the chaos. Now it's your turn. What moment in this story shocked you the most? Drop it in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And remember, you're watching Reddit Confessions, where every story is more than what it seems. Until next time,